What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D, Mr. Double Down on You, with another episode of Black Fathers Now. Now, dig this, man. We're going to really have a cool conversation. We're going to have a cool conversation. We're going to have a conversation that's going to have some twists and turns to it. But check this out. I'm just going to give you a little intro here. The brother that I have on today, he's a husband and he's a father. He's also a renowned sports analyst and commentator, very well known for his NBA coverage. What you'll also know if you follow this brother is that he always brings his A game, but he also stands on his faith, and everywhere you see him in public, he's not ashamed to share that. And the brother that I'm talking about that I have on the line with us today is none other than Chris Broussard. What's going on, my man?
Man, I'm great, brother. I'm happy to be on with you, and I'm proud of all you're doing. You're doing a great work out there, man, with Black Fathers Now. It's very much needed. You know, I often say there are obviously a lot of systemic obstacles in our path as African Americans. And even with the fatherless issue, there are a lot of systemic roots of that. You know, it's not just man up and take care of your child, but that's a part of it.
Yes.
You know, and what I say is for all the challenges facing us, the fatherlessness might be the biggest. You know, and we, no matter what advances we get in society, if we don't strengthen our families, and obviously to strengthen our families, we need strong fathers, then we could be just doing it all for naught. So I applaud what you're doing, and all the brothers watching, all the brothers that work with you, I applaud them as well, because this is what we need, brother. When I grew up, you know, in Cincinnati, Ohio, in Indianapolis, Indiana, in integrated or even mostly Black areas, man, almost everybody had their father there. You know, like, I mean, in a Black neighborhood, like, it was just like we took it for granted that you had your father there, you had your father there, you had your father there. And I just remember them in the neighborhood and being role models. And, you know, I've told younger African-American brothers, like maybe in their 30s, that, and they've been astounded. Like, what? Like, really?
It's real.
You know, like shocked, because now we might get mad if people stereotype you and think, oh, you Black, you didn't have your father. But you know what? That's the norm, unfortunately. And so we need to strengthen our family structure to really become the great people and experience the great quality of life that God wants us as a people, as a community, as a race to have.
Man, dude, you said a mouthful there, and I really do believe that, you know, everything starts with that foundation, right? We really have to bring it. And, you know, again, you think about the divine order, we're set to be a unit, not just to be a solo individual, right? And but again, we understand circumstances and systemic issues and things happen, right? And but to your point, to build that foundation, we need to set it on that strong foundation, and that includes us being there, being present, and doing the doggone thing. Because, and then the other part to it is, you know, I also like to make it a point to celebrate the brothers who are doing it, because at the end of the day, a lot of times what gets the highlight or what gets the notoriety is fatherlessness. But one of the reasons, actually one of the inspirations behind Black Fathers Now, was I looked around at my contemporaries, and the overwhelming majority of my contemporaries are great dads. Like, some of them might not be married, some of them might not necessarily be with the mother of their child, but they're in the lives of their kids. And, you know, it's a balance to the narrative. And yes, we do have an issue, but then we also have brothers who are there. And a lot of those brothers that I found also are yearning to do better. So they want to go from good to great. So it's like we have that part that we need to pull the bottom up, but then we also need to take that middle and kick the roof off and take that middle to the top as well. So it's like we're all playing our role in this whole thing, so that we have the full story, not just one piece, but the full story of the Black male experience.
Well, to your point, there was a study that came out a few years ago that you know what I'm referencing, that showed that Black fathers are actually the most engaged. Or at least more than white fathers engaged in their children's lives. So you're right. Even brothers that maybe there was a divorce, or they're just not with their kids living with them, but they still can be very much engaged in their children's lives. So we definitely want to applaud those brothers too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, but before we jump into your story a little bit, I always have the brothers give shout outs because, I really roll off of the concept of it takes a village to raise a child, but every strong and successful adult also has a village or a team or support network around them as well. So before we get into your journey, brother, give a few shout outs to those individuals, those entities, those folks in your family, whoever it may be, that helps you be the brother that you are day in and day out.
Wow. Well, first, I want to shout out my parents for setting a great example for me. My father, my parents in October celebrated their 55th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Amazing. And before them, both of their parents, so both my sets of grandparents, were married until they died, which was over 50 years. Both of them, I remember celebrating their 50th wedding anniversaries.
Wow.
So that set an example for me almost through osmosis, like it wasn't like they sat me down necessarily and told me this, and this, but just seeing their example of being married, being committed to their marriage and their family, that set an example for me. So that's like the norm. Like yes. I that's just what I grew up in, and that's what I strive for, and that's what I want. So I certainly shout out them. Shout out the brothers in the King movement, which we may talk about later, but that's a men's organization I founded and am president of. And it really is a great brotherhood to have because all of the brothers in the King movement are striving to, be family men and be the best husbands they can be the best fathers they can be, committed to the Black community and all communities, but we're a majority Black organization committed to uplifting our communities and really just about the positive, man. And so those brothers help keep me strong. And my wife, Crystal, who is a medical doctor, and my children, my two daughters, Alexis and Noelle, they're just a great source of support and inspiration and motivation, because I told my daughters, we were talking just a few weeks ago, and I told them, I said, one of the things, I mean, there are others as well, but one of the things that keeps me, like sometimes if I'm tempted to do something that really could have dire consequences on my family or my marriage, something negative.
Yes.
I think about them and think about the impact it could have on them. And how it could affect their lives, and that helps keep me in line. And so I certainly want to shout out them as well.
That's deep, man. When you said that, it makes me think about the concept of big picture thinking, right? As far as like decision making, as far as doing what we do, always keeping the big picture in mind in regards to how we operate. And by keeping our family, keeping our faith, and keeping these things at the forefront, it helps us to kind of have that North Star, because again, we're human, right? We got, we got issues and desires and whatever and all this stuff. And we have to have these things that keep us in line. And whatever that thing is for you, for the brothers that are listening, you need to find that thing and hold on to that thing, because at the end of the day, we're human. You think you're strong, right? You think you're strong. But the reality is, yeah. You think you're strong until.
That's absolutely right.
That's for real, man. And so, thinking about your story, man, you are renowned as a sports analyst, as a commentator, sports writer, and all of that, but we're talking to Black men. And truthfully, a lot of brothers grow up wanting to be the athlete. A lot of us grow up wanting to be on the court, wanting to be on the field. But you are a sports writer, sports analyst. I know you played ball too, back in the day, but what were some of the influence or some of the inspirations for you growing up that allowed you to move into that particular realm? Because again, we always see it from the lens of, I want to be on the court. I want to be the baller, right? You're writing and talking about the baller.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about that trajectory and the inspirations that led to that, brother. Well,
I'm glad you brought it up that way, because one thing when I'm talking to youth, I always tell them, and you know that like 70% of young black boys in elementary school around that age think not only want to be
they think they're
professional
gonna be
athletes, but think they're going to, you know.
Your daddy 5'8" and you going to the league.
Right, right. Man, it's amazing. And so I tell young brothers and sisters, but I say, look, I wanted to be a professional athlete when I was your age. I wanted to play in the NFL. I wanted to play in the NBA. I remember my aunt, who became a judge, actually. She was a lawyer. And when I was about 7 or 8 years old, about 7 years old, she asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up, Chris? And I said, a football player. She was like, okay. You don't make it to the NFL. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a basketball player. And she, Chris, okay, all right. If you don't play football, you don't play basketball, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a baseball player. No.
Just go down the list.
That's how I grew up. I mean, I wanted to be a professional athlete. And so many young brothers are like that. And I tell them, I'm an example, as many others are, that you can make it in professional sports without, if you don't make it on the field. Because the overwhelming majority of us will not make it on the field.
Yes.
And you can be a sports writer, sports broadcaster, sports agent, sports photographer, a coach, a nutritionist, a trainer, a videographer. I mean, the list goes on and on. Sports marketing, advertising, working at Nike, Reebok, whatever. There's so many opportunities out there in sports. And the thing you need for all of them, though, barring unless you become some superstar athlete, is your education. You're not going to be that great sports photographer or that great sports broadcaster or writer without getting your education. And so focus on your education. And if you want to do that, focus on, building yourself up toward that career. I say, look, if I say I want to make the NBA, I want to play in the NBA, but I never work on my game.
Come on.
I never work on my J. I never work on my handle. I don't go play at the park. I don't get in the AAU, whatever. I'm just dreaming. And unfortunately, I find a lot of young people, particularly young boys, who may say, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an engineer. I want to be this or that. But yet they don't work. They don't try their best in school. They don't do, try to get the good grades. And that's the equivalent of not working on your game if you want to make the NBA. Like if you want to be a doctor, engineer, whatever, politician, president, you have got to do your best in school.
Yes.
That's the first step. So that's one thing. And for me, the way I actually even thought about sports, right, because I didn't know what I wanted to do growing up. And so my sophomore year in college, I looked around. I went to Oberlin College in Ohio, which actually is the first white American college to admit, to have the policy of admitting African Americans.
Wow, that's interesting.
It wasn't the first school to have a black graduate. There were one or two before it.
Okay. But
they had like one black graduate. But Oberlin was the first school where written in its policy, we accept African American students. We're going out. And in fact, at the turn of the 20th century, so the early 1900s, 2 out of every 3 African American college graduates went to Oberlin.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah. So it's a strong black history there. And they actually had Oberlin, the town, was a stop on the Underground Railroad.
Wow. So
they had like the railroad tracks in the city and the town coming out and stuff. So, but yeah, so I went there and I looked around, and I played on the basketball team, as you mentioned, and our team was majority black, which was unusual for Division III. But our team was 80% African American. And I looked around at my boys, my friends, my frat brothers, girl I was dating or whatever, and they all had plans. They knew, one knew he wanted to be an engineer. One knew he was going to law school. One knew he was going to get his MBA, you know, public policy school. The girl I was dating who later became my wife knew she was going to med school. So I looked at them and I was like, man, they all know what they want to do. And I don't have a clue.
Wow.
You know, and I've got 2 years left before I graduate and have to become a responsible adult and take care of myself and pay bills and whatnot. And so I came up with a formula. Okay. I took something that I am gifted at, which was writing. I always was able to write. That was just a gift. Okay. And we all have our various, that's a dog.
Look, this is Black Fathers now, man. Look, this is
right,
what we doing home.
Right.
That's dogs, kids.
She's out of town, so she left them with us. But I'm gonna get him out of here in a minute.
You good?
Let me get him.
Okay. No problem.
Cool out, Bo. So anyway, so I came up with a formula. I was always gifted at writing. So I said, I'll take writing plus, so something I'm gifted at plus something I enjoy.
Okay.
And that was sports. You know, I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school, basketball in college. I read Sports Illustrated religiously. Whenever we were given the option of reading a book, you know, in school, picking a book for a book reporter that you have to write a story on or whatever, I picked a sports book. I mean, I just love sports. And so I took sports plus writing and said, let me try to become a sports writer.
Wow.
And so that's a formula that I would give to young people as you're trying to figure out what you want to do in your life. Something you're gifted at, think about your gifts, plus something that you enjoy, which is, you know, because you want a job that you'll enjoy.
Yes.
You're going to work 40 to 70 hours a week, you know, in most career type jobs. And so if you're doing something you don't enjoy, it can really, you know, you can be miserable. And most adults, unfortunately, don't have a job they enjoy. And so that's one thing an education affords you in most cases is when you have a good education, you can choose your career. I chose to be a sports writer. My wife chose to be a doctor. If you don't have the education, man, you just got to take what you can get, right? You got to make ends meet. I got to go do this. I got to go do that. If you have an education, you can choose your career.
So you mentioned, you know, education affords you the choice. But one of the things you mentioned really speaks directly to who I am. So at the beginning of this, I said I might be Mr. Double Down on You. And Double Down on You is my personal development protocol. And it's based off of an acronym. And the Double Down on You personal development protocol goes, embrace your greatness while pursuing your interest, recognizing your faults and failures, yet guarding yourself against your personal triggers. GIFT. It's all about unwrapping your gift. Greatness and interest. You mentioned your greatness was as a writer. Your interest was in sports. So when we go through the Double Down on You protocol, it's all about finding that intersection of your greatness and your interest, because when you find those things intersect, that's where you have zero limits. That's where you have unlimited potential. And you've really gotten to the point in which, you know, most would say you've reached the pinnacle of sports writing, being an analyst, being on television and all of that. And it's all because you've doubled down on your greatness and your interest, and you found an opportunity where those two things intersect. And I wanted to highlight that about your story because most people do not take that time beforehand to identify who they are. So people come to me all the time. It's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm like, okay, well, who are you? And most can't answer that. What are you great at? What do you enjoy doing? Well, they can't really identify that. And so if we reverse engineer the process and get back down to the point in which you identified during your sophomore year in college of, I'm great here, I have an interest here. Where do those two things intersect? Because there we have unlimited potential. And I'll be honest with you, you know, thinking in the context of sports, rarely do we see that come into play outside of sports and entertainment. So you take a LeBron. At the age of 10, LeBron knew he was that dude. He knew he was that dude at the age of 10, right? He was already 6'2" at, 5th grade, whatever it was. Like, the brother was gifted. Like, he had some, God-given gifts there that other people didn't have, and he was interested in it. So at 10, he doubled down on that thing and became who he is now.
Right.
Outside of sports and outside of entertainment, most of us don't do that. And if we started to really take initiative and really do that, but most importantly, for those of us that are already professional, already adults, when we see those things kind of brewing in somebody young, we need to help them to uncover that so that maybe they don't have to wait until their sophomore year in college to understand that, dude, this is a path that you might need to explore, right?
Absolutely. And that's one thing I tell young brothers who are interested in sports broadcasting or writing or whatever it may be. If you know, and it could be medicine, law, accounting, if you know what you want to do, then go all in on it. If you know that, like at a young age, especially in my field, not especially, but in my field, it's very competitive. I mean, a lot of people would love to be sports broadcasters and sports analysts and commentators. And so that's how competitive it is. So if you know in 7th grade, 8th grade that this is what you want to do, then go all in on it.
Yes.
And today, with the technology, I mean, you can start your own YouTube channel.
Yes.
You can start a website, a blog, a podcast, where you're doing the things that we're doing on television and commentating and analyzing games and things like that, and really get that experience of doing it and get comfortable in front of the camera and all of that. So, yeah, man, it's you're absolutely right. We need to if we need to focus early on what we getting to our goal if we already know what we want to do.
Well, and uncovering that greatness and uncovering the gifts that are there, because a lot of times these gifts are buried. And unless you have someone to pull it out, like I look at myself now, doing these interviews and having conversations with brothers like yourself, I wish in the 10th grade, somebody had said, Mike, you're gifted here. Dude, I want to help you to kind of uncover that thing that I see inside of you. But, I didn't have that. And it took me, I'm 41 now, to starting to get into my zone into my 30s to really understand that, you know what, dude, this is the lane that you really need to walk in. This is a gift that you have. You need to uncover. You need to massage that thing a little bit. So we need to be mindful of that. But fellas, whether it's your kids or even whether it's yourself, you look in the mirror and recognize that there's something inside of you that needs to come out. Explore that thing. And once you find out something that you're great in and you have interest in and those things intersect, double down on that now. The time is now. All right. And so thinking about your story a little bit, you moved around a lot growing up. I read that, you lived in a lot of different places and all of that, due to your dad's job, I believe. And how did moving around a lot help to influence maybe your thinking, and also how did it maybe come into play now by having different experiences, different environments, and different groups, interacting with growing up?
Well, moving around, I think there were pros and cons. And I did move around. When I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, as a baby, before I was a year old, we moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. I lived there for 7 years. Moved from there to Indianapolis, Indiana for 4.5 years. From there to Syracuse, New York for 1.5 years. From there to Des Moines, Iowa for 2.5 years.
Brothers in Iowa.
Yeah. And then from Des Moines to Cleveland, Ohio for my last 1.5 years of high school. And so I've spent most of my younger life in Ohio, but certainly in the Midwest. And then now I live in New Jersey. I've been here now for 22 years. But moving around, I say the pros of moving around were, one, it made my family fairly close. Because when you move and you first get to a new place, all you have is each other.
That's it. We all we got.
Like, you don't know anybody else, and you just clinging to each other. So it made our family close. It also taught me how to get along with different types of people, to adapt to different environments and Black, white, various different groups of people, races of people. So that was a positive. And it taught me that I could, you could legitimately be happy wherever you were at.
Mm-hmm.
And every place, there were places I liked more than others,
Mm-hmm.
but I was legitimately happy everywhere I was. And I can look back fondly at all of the places that I lived in. So those were some of the pros. The cons, it's funny now, like my kids grew up, they were born in Cleveland, but when they were 5 months old, we moved to New Jersey, and they've lived there the rest of their lives or the rest of their, childhoods. And it was something within me that I didn't consciously say, because I moved around, I don't want them moving around. But it was something within me that was like, okay, they got friends that they like, in a good neighborhood they like, they're in schools that they like. I don't want to uproot them.
Ooh.
And I'm sure that's somehow related to my experiences growing up. So I wanted to give them that stability of staying, where they're at, unless we absolutely had to move. And so that was important to me when they were growing up. But I just think it taught me how to get along with various types of people, regardless of socioeconomic status or your race. It taught me how to adapt, and talk to different types of people, which is important in my job.
Yes.
Because you're dealing with all types of people. So I think that it was really something I drew from moving around a lot. And just it broadens your horizons as well.
Yes, like travel.
Traveling really opens up your eyes. So living in different places, it really opens up your eyes to different parts of America and things like that,
Guys, and it's interesting, man. I always look at, how everything in life happens for a reason, in the sense that, you did a lot of moving around, but then look at you now, you're, doing all the stuff with the different sports stuff and interacting with different guys, having to travel all around. I mean, it's interesting. Everything sets up for something else. And sometimes we don't know what that setup's going to be. And that's why they call hindsight 2020, because you got to look back and say this makes sense. Me learning how to deal with these folks and these folks now when I'm in contract negotiations, or I'm in this or I'm in that, it's I prepared for you when I was in the 8th grade.
Right.
It's just interesting, man. But you have to be open to seeing those connections for you to realize that everything has a purpose.
No doubt. And it also taught me, man, I think sometimes, and I don't want to sound like the old man saying, get off my lawn and all that. But I think that sometimes this generation, sometimes we expect everything to be easy.
Yes.
Or everything to be catered to you, and that's just not how life is. And we can try, obviously you want to try to make society better, but it's always going to be obstacles. There are always going to be challenges. And for me, I read that first day of school.
Yes.
When you go into a new place.
Yes, that's no joke.
It was always like, man, you know what? You got to man up.
Yeah.
You scared, you're nervous, you don't know anybody, but you got to man up and walk up in here. I remember when we moved to Iowa, I was just about to start my freshman year of high school. So I was there my freshman, sophomore, and 3/4 of my junior year of high school. And so we got to Des Moines, Iowa, the night before freshman football practice started. Ooh. So I, don't know a soul. We stay in a hotel that night. I get up early in the morning. My dad drives me to the high school and walks me into the coach's office. Now it's 105 kids there.
Wow.
All right. And they know each other, dudes, guys there. They know each other. Ain't none of their dads there.
Wow.
And my dad's walking me into the coach's office. Whew. And, it's just like, man, you don't know nobody, And it was one other brother.
You was in Iowa. I was going to say it. I was just you
his
got to be
father
your
was
brother.
who didn't, I don't think raised him, but his mom was white.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, the only other brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so Des Moines was about 12% black. I think it's even more so now. So there were some blacks there, but the school I went to was a Catholic school, was overwhelmingly white. And yeah, man. So things like I could recount the first day of school in almost every place I moved to.
Wow.
Because you know, as a kid, that's a big deal.
That is a huge deal.
It teaches you how to man up through a tough situation, through a challenge, and fight through it.
You got to fight through it, and you have to get through it, and then you can release later, right? It's funny, as you were talking, I thought about, I think it was Friday after next, or next Friday, when Pinky, the character Pinky, was in there and they were getting robbed, and Pinky was being hard, and then after the guy who was robbing him left, he was like, oh, that joker had me shook, man. I ain't gonna. But while it was happening, man, he was manning up. He was like, who you think you are? Who you gonna do? And as soon as he left, Pinky was like, "Ooh, that joker had me scared, man." Right. But I'm Pinky, so you can't do that, right?
If we gotta go there, I'm gonna go there. Yeah.
I'm gonna go there. Now, when you leave, I'm crying, but
right. You know what? Look, it's like I've heard Mike Tyson, I believe, say every time he walk into the ring, he's nervous.
That's it.
And you're a little scared. Like
of all people, that's right.
Right. I mean, that's a part of life. And we have to understand that you have to be able to go through some things.
Yes.
I was talking with my daughter the other night, and she's, her new job is challenging and tough and things like that. And she, we're talking about it, she gonna stay in it and this and that. And I said to her, I said, well, look, I said, I know this isn't the first time you've had a tough challenge, right? Mm. And she's like, nah. And I was like, okay, good. Because, she was a great student. She went to the University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League, and graduated, summa cum laude and all that. And so I was like, that's good, because you've had challenges academically. You've had tough classes and courses that you didn't think you'd get through or do well in, and you fought through it. And that'll teach you how to fight through this. And I was worried. I was like, I hope this is not your first challenge.
Yeah, I know, for real.
Going through. And one thing I told her, because she was wondering, is God leading me somewhere else or whatever? I said, look, one thing we know is that God will not lead you out of a situation, or he's not calling you out of a situation just because the situation's difficult. Ooh. Now, he may be leading you out. He may be showing you don't enjoy this field. This is not what you want to do.
But it ain't because it's hard.
For you, right? That's one thing. But if it's just, I really want to do this, but man, it's hard. It's difficult. God's not leading you out just because of that, because you couldn't take it, because it was too hard for you, because it challenged you, because it stretched you. In a lot of cases, God is putting you in a situation that will stretch you and challenge you and bring something out of you that you may not have known was there.
And dude, I'm gonna tell you, that's such a perfect transition as we, kind of get to the end of our conversation. Faith and the inspiration behind the King movement, which you founded and created, and some of the things that you all have going on. Man, talk to us a little bit, first about your faith and how that helps you on a daily basis in the public sphere, but then the creation of the King movement and anything that you want to kind of share about what you all have going on, in the coming months.
Well, I'm a Christian, and I became a Christian. I grew up Catholic, but I wasn't really living out of faith. My lifestyle wasn't in line with trying to be a Christian or anything like that. Didn't know anything about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So I really became a Christian my senior year in college. And it just turned my life around. It changed my morals. It changed my worldview. There's no way I would be the father, the husband, the leader that I am today without my faith in Christ and what it did for me. And so with the King movement, it's hundreds of brothers who have that faith in Christ and who've had their lives transformed because of their faith in Christ. And so we understand if God can do that for us, he can do that for anybody. We're
Absolutely.
not any more special than anybody else. So God, if he did it for us, he'll do it for others. And when we look at our community and we look at some of the challenges that face us, we understand if we can get brothers to fall in love with God and live according to his principles, then that will go a long way in strengthening our families and our children and our communities. And so that is, what the King movement is about. In a nutshell, we want to strengthen men in their daily walks with Christ so that we live out our faith in him Monday through Saturday, not just Sunday in church. Maybe I should say Sunday afternoon through Saturday.
There you go. There you go.
But not just in church, but with your frat brothers, with your, when you playing ball at open gym, you're on campus, in the workplace, wherever you're at, live out your faith. And, you see me on television, and yes, people know I'm a Christian, and I don't hide from that. But I'm also not throwing the Bible in people's faces.
There
and,
you go.
Bum rushing people and this and that. So I just live that lifestyle. And as opportunities are open to share, I'll share. But what led me to start the King movement was when I said I was 21 when I became a Christian. And as men, we need male bonding.
Yes.
Just like women need female bonding.
Yes.
And so one of the, whether it's in your fraternity, whether it's in your a gang even, whether it's in a lodge. And one of the best things about playing sports is the bond.
Yes.
My best friends growing up were on my sports team.
Your teams, yep.
That's great, right? And so when I graduated college and I'm trying to live for the Lord and walk with the Lord, I missed that male bonding in the Lord. And I had it in my frat and other things, but I wanted male bonding with men who were going to encourage me in my walk with Christ.
Absolutely.
And men who, but at the same time, who I could relate to in terms of sports, culture, hip hop, whatever it might be. And so that was one of the things that led me to found the King movement, to get that brotherhood, that male body, and give that to other men. I also noticed that a lot of men's walks with Christ was like a roller coaster. Up and down, strong for a year.
Yep.
Down for 6 months, strong for 3 months, out for 2 years. And one of those valleys, you can ruin your life.
Yes.
One of those valleys, you could, destroy your family, destroy your relationship with your children, wreck a car, kill somebody, whatever it might be, And I was meeting brothers who, depending on your life, brothers who came out of prison, was on the street selling dope. And one of those valleys, they get involved in crime and they're back in jail, or prison. So I felt like with a lot of them, they didn't have a lot of Christian brothers they could relate to in everyday life. Like I said, sports, hip hop, culture, whatever, that were also going to encourage them in their walk with Christ.
Absolutely.
And so I felt like if we could get a brotherhood where you had that, and where the brother's gonna tell you when a woman's throwing you rhythm at work, they're gonna encourage you to not cheat on your wife with her. Versus some that might be like, yo, you got to hit that. You know what I'm saying?
That's real.
So that's what led. Those are two of the things. And I'm going to throw out the third thing. When I became a Christian, I was talking to my brother about Christ. Everything. He's a year younger than me. He was at Howard University, HBCU, and he ended up joining the Nation of Islam. And he was challenging me on my faith and, this and that, and really talking about the hypocrisy of Christians and, it's not real and this and that. And, let's be honest, the conception within the Black community, especially 20 years ago, and to some degree today still, was that if you want somebody to reach the brothers in the streets, if you want somebody to reach the brothers in the prisons, it's the Muslims that can do it.
That was it.
Can't nobody else do it. Get
That's
the
right.
Nation of Islam out there and they'll do it. And I was meeting brothers from prison, brothers that had come from the streets, brothers that had these wild testimonies of what they had been doing before they came to Christ, who had their lives transformed through Jesus. And I was saying it's a lot more brothers who've had their lives transformed through Jesus than from the Muslims, you know? And I was like, but if we come together and we work together, then we can increase our witness in our community. And people will see strong Black Christian men, because now there is a caricature of Black Christian men.
Yep.
It is either you are a scam artist, you know, you're using the church as just a job to make money, get women, whatever. Or there's, you know, brothers who are just incredibly soft, you know, and even effeminate and all that. And that is, there's a stereotype about that in the Black Christian church. And so those not the kind of men I was meeting in Christ.
That's real.
I was meeting real brothers that love Jesus, that could hoop with you, play football with you, you know, take it there if they had to, you know, like real dudes. And I was like, man, we got to come together, and so that we can increase our witness and be an example for other men. Because one thing I tell you, man, when you look in the Black community, and this is all of America to some degree, but it's more so in the Black community, there are far more women in the church than men.
Yep, absolutely.
And that is not biblical.
Nope.
Like when you look in the Bible, there's no dearth of men. You have plenty of women serving God, but there's plenty of men. Like there's no, oh, where are all the men at? Where, Adam, where art thou? You know, as far as finding men in the church. And so we must be doing something wrong. And the fact is, the Black church has been effeminized. It is geared toward more women, getting you emotional, getting you hyped up and all excited. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like getting hyped in church too. But if you look at groups that draw men, now people will tell you, men sometimes, in most cases, men are more drawn to the logic, the knowledge, explain something to me, teach it to me. Look at the Nation of Islam is far more men.
Because of how,
and how, you know, they're appealing to your intellect. They are teaching you, even if some of it may be wrong. They're teaching you and appealing to your intellect, and they get men. The Hebrew Israelites getting a lot of men now. They teach and appeal to your intellect. And even a lot of Christian churches that have a lot of men, Black men, their style, a lot of cases, is the brother is teaching. And so I think that, like, what King is, it's a masculine expression of faith in Christ. And that's what men should have, a masculine expression of our faith in Christ.
Ooh, brother, you said a mouthful, but you literally hit the nail on the head in regards to it's the why and the understanding, but then we also have to analyze the how. How are we getting to? What is it that we're putting out? Because those are the things that are going to attract and connect to men. And so we got to have spaces. We got to have voices. That's why we have to have conversations like this, Black Fathers Now, so that we can use an example or an analogy that the brothers don't need to pull out a dictionary or go search. Like, what are they talking about? Like, no, they know, they understand it, right? And so to your point, you hit the nail on the head with that. And that's powerful. The King movement. Talk to us about where can brothers who want to learn more about the King movement, where can they find that? And don't y'all have like an event coming up in the next couple of months too? Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll get you information so that we can get you out of here. I know you got to run, brother.
Yeah, we have 16 chapters throughout the country, and our local chapters are the lifeblood of the movement. They meet once a month. They do community service. They do evangelism. They just, you know, do other social events together, and really shine a light in the community. We actually have a chapter in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
I know you're in Knoxville, but you can go to our website. It's kingmovement.com.
Okay.
kingmovement.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram is The King Movement, thekingmovement.com. But the event you mentioned, we have a national summit every year.
Okay.
And the last 3 years, we've done it in a different city. So we did it in Memphis 3 years ago. We did it in Atlanta 2 years ago. We were going to do it in Charlotte in 2020, but it got canceled because of the pandemic.
Okay.
And now this year, it was going to be in Brooklyn, New York at Christian Cultural Center, Pastor A.R. Bernard. It's the largest church in New York City, but we're going to do it virtually.
Okay.
And we've got great speakers, man. We got a lot of brothers contributing. Tony Dungy, Ben Watson, Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots. Brian Dawkins, Hall of Famer with the Philadelphia Eagles. We have Dr. Vince Bantu, who, if you have not heard of him, you see me on television a lot talking about the GOAT. Is it Tom Brady or Joe Montana? Is it LeBron James or Michael Jordan? All right, it's Jordan and it's Brady, just to let you know. But I'll leave wiggle room for LeBron. We'll see. He's still getting it.
He got time.
A little wiggle room. But when it comes, because I used to teach seminars, like we talked about the challenges of getting black men to church. And one of the myths and one of these barriers you have to deal with when you minister to black men, whether it is and I've done prison ministry, corporate ministry, in the streets, colleges, and wherever, you will be faced with the challenge or the myth that Christianity is the white man's religion. And because of the way that whites have misused it, particularly in this country, but really throughout the world to some degree. And portrayed it as such. And so as I began studying, I became very well versed in the black presence in the Bible, black biblical history. And so I teach, or used to teach, especially seminars on blacks in the Bible. And how African nations are mentioned more than 1,000 times in the Bible. And Greece and Rome were mentioned less than 50 times combined in the Old Testament.
Wow.
And how the first Gentile convert to Christianity was an Ethiopian man, a black man, Acts chapter 8. How the men that led Paul, the Apostle Paul, out to minister to the Gentiles and lay hands on him were two black men, Lucius of Cyrene, which was in Africa, and Simon called Niger. That's Acts chapter 13. So I became a teacher of black presence in the Bible. And also, we're so unaware of our history. If you don't know 2 + 2 is 4, if you don't know math, and you don't know 2 + 2 is 4, I can easily tell you 2 + 2 is 5.
Yes.
And you won't know any better.
You won't know any
better. When we hear things like Christianity is the white man's religion, Islam's the black man's religion, we only know about Christianity because of slavery. We don't know our history, so we can easily fall for that.
Come on. But
Christianity was in Africa more than 1,000 years before the Atlantic slave trade, before colonialism. Ethiopia is the first or second oldest Christian country in the world. Either
Lalibela
or Armenia. There are some that say Armenia, some that say Ethiopia. Nubia was a Christian nation for more than 1,000 years. Many of the most influential theologians of Christian theology that we still follow today, Augustine, Tertullian, Origen, Athanasius, were Africans.
Absolutely.
I mean, and we could go on and on. But when it comes to early African church history, the GOAT is Dr. Vince Bantu. This brother is a monster. All right. And I obviously know a lot about African church history, pre-colonial African church history and all that. He knows stuff and has made me aware of things that I had no idea of. He is translating Christian writings from African languages.
Ooh, wow.
From Ge'ez, which was the Ethiopian language, from Nubian languages into English. Now, this isn't the Bible. These are like, commentaries that African Christians thousands of years ago, or almost 2,000 years ago, wrote about Christianity and the Bible. And so we know about a lot of white historical theologians, right? Even if we don't know what they taught, or we've heard the names.
Yes.
He is bringing it out of all these African scholars. And not Africans that were part of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
But Africans in sub-Saharan Africa, Nubia. He's actually uncovered how even in West Africa, there were pockets, at least one pocket that he's identified, of Christians near Mali that Mansa Musa referenced.
Dude, we see, you said his name is Dr. Vince Bantu?
Dr. Vince Bantu, YouTube, he's on YouTube.
Okay.
Googling the dude. We held King Movement a year ago, and I know you want to ask something, so I'll be brief. We had, in October of 2019, we had a debate between a Christian scholar who was Dr. Vince Bantu and a Kemetic priest, Brother Jabari Osaze, who I got respect for and love for. And he's on YouTube a lot, teaching Kemetic religion and all that. And so we had them debate in Philadelphia in October, and it was packed, hundreds of people. There were Christians, Hebrew Israelites, Muslims, and Kemetics there. And the objective, because obviously the Christians gonna rock with Dr. Bantu, the Kemetics gonna rock with Brother Osaze. But the objective cats, the Hebrew Israelites and the Muslims, they agreed Dr. Bantu won.
Wow.
And so this brother, he's the GOAT. I mean, he is a bad boy. And so definitely check him out on YouTube or Google him or whatever. He runs his own school of theology called the Meacham School of Hymenot. Hymenot is the Ethiopian word for theology. And he's a beast, man.
Man, dude.
But he'll be there at the summer. Go ahead.
No, you could. My mind is blown because when you mention that, as soon as we get done with this, I'm about to go ham looking up, Dr. Vince Bantu and kind of learning more about his perspective. My wife and I, we took the kids to Rome last October. And so when you go through Rome and you understand the Roman Empire and you see parts of North Africa were included, when you said he was talking about African presence in the Bible or from a Christian perspective outside of the Roman Empire, my spidey senses went up. I was like, ooh, I want to really dive into that because that opens up the window, because historically speaking, a lot of what was talked about was always included in the Roman Empire, which was Northern Africa, Europe, and basically east of the Middle East. But I also did, and the reason I'm, kind of jumping here, I don't want to keep you over because I know you said you got a hard stop. And so we want to kind of, I'll be respectful of your time.
Right.
In regards to your journey, your story, all the things that you've done, how have all of these things come full circle to impact you as a Black father?
Okay, let me quickly finish up the summit thing and then I'll get there.
Absolutely.
So we're going to do the summit virtually. Dr. Bantu will be there. Dr. A.R. Bernard will speak. Pastor Derwin Gray, several others. And it will be virtual March 19th and 20th. March 19th and 20th, and we will soon be putting out promotion where brothers can register, and it'll be all online, and it's going to be phenomenal, man. We're going to have, it's going to be a really great event for men. Awesome. And so, I invite all the brothers with Black fathers now, and hopefully you guys can promote it, but that'll be a great event. But as far as, man, like I said, I mean, my faith in Christ has just helped teach me, in addition to the example that I have from my parents and my grandparents, but my faith in Christ has taught me even more about, how to be a better husband and a better father. And, with my daughters, I had two daughters, twin daughters, and now they're 22 years old. They graduated from college in May. But one thing I did with them, I always tried to keep the lines of communication open. And so we openly spoke with them about drugs and alcohol and sex and so on and so forth from a godly perspective and things, and really listen to them. I didn't, when I grew up, my father was a very much authority figure, and it wasn't no talking back. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't talk back, say nothing,
There it is.
And I loved him. I knew he loved me, and it was great and all that, but it wasn't no talking back. And I think a lot of us in the Black community, sometimes we're raised like that. Don't talk back, don't say nothing back, well, why I got to do, because I said so, that type of thing. And, and sometimes when we get in corporate America, sometimes, not in every case, we can be tentative, whereas whites walk in there with a sense of entitlement.
There you go.
And thinking they should take over the company from the get-go. Sometimes we may be tentative in those situations. And so I wanted with my daughters, I always wanted them to be able to speak their mind to me. And even if I ended up disagreeing or correcting or whatever, I wanted them to feel free to say what they wanted to say, and then we could talk about it. And even sometimes if you hear, as they were younger, you hear them say something that might shock you inside. Like, oh my, what? Like, I never showed that outside. I'm like, okay, cool. So let's talk, And so I think that helps keep the lines open. And now I talk to them about, their dating men and their relationships, and they'll come to me sometimes for advice on relationships. And, it's a very open lines of communication, which is great. And that's really all that you can ask for. I'll say this too, with the fathers out there, because we joke a lot, right? About, oh yeah, I'm gonna have my gun right there sitting by me when old boy come over, Now we joke about that, but let's be honest, stuff like that probably never happens nowadays.
That's right.
Because and so I'm not sitting a gun by the table meeting dudes, but every man or boy that starting in high school that my daughters dated, I met.
That's right.
And if they dated them, like one wanted to take them to the prom, or they were dating kind of seriously, I would take them out to Starbucks, to lunch somewhere, and have a conversation with them. I expect my daughter to be treated with respect. I don't want my daughter being pressured into doing anything, and so on and so forth. Because, and I'm not just trying to scare the dude, but I would talk to them like that. And because I thought about it, and that never happened to me as a kid. But I thought about it, and I was like, man, if a girl's father had sat me down and talked to me like that, it would have really had an impact on me and the way I treated her.
Absolutely.
Different, it would have. So I did that. And I think that's something that I think is good, because you don't want no clowns, trying to use and abuse your daughters,
Brother, deep. And fellas, I hope you paid attention to that wisdom, man. Open lines of communication, stand on your faith, understand where your greatness and your interests lie, find those points of intersection, double down on that. Literally be about purpose, live a life of purpose, bring your A game all day, every day, and literally live a life, live a life centered on Christ, because at the end of the day, it's going to change your life. It's going to change how you operate, but more importantly, it's going to change the lives of those people that you interact with. And that's what this thing is all about. We're passing the torch to the next person. We're lighting candles of those that are around us so that everything gets I'm getting tongue tied here. Everything gets lit up. And so Chris, man, I really appreciate you coming on, man. We definitely got to stay in touch, man, because I really like what you got going on, and I want to help push whatever you have going, because, man, it's all about really pushing the right narratives, because there's a lot of bad ones out there, but when we find the right ones, we need to double down on those, push them, and make things happen. So we're going to do that.
Hey, brother, look, like I said, I really appreciate all the good work you're doing. And I I'll support whatever you got going. And we will definitely stay in touch, man. So thanks for having me. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
I appreciate it. Hey, fellas, make sure to visit kingmovement.com. Make sure to follow King Movement on Instagram and Facebook, and definitely look out for information about the virtual conference that's coming out March the 19th and 20th, the King Movement, the annual conference. Be on the lookout for it, register, check it out, and make sure to follow Chris Broussard. Look, if you don't already follow him, follow the brother. You can tell he got some game, right? He's got some game. And as always, make sure to follow Black Fathers Now on all social media outlets, subscribe to the podcast, leave ratings, leave comments, share. And fellas, until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise, and I'll holler at you. Peace.